Come all the soldiers of Selous. We are looking for our enemies who fight against Rhodesia. We live in the bush. We sleep in the bush, living like homeless ones, looking for our enemies who wish to destroy Rhodesia.
Modern conventional warfare has made elite troops out of the highly mechanized units. But in bush warfare, the elite are the combat tracker units. I'm Dave Patterson, and I'm with Lieutenant Colonel Ron Reed Daly, commander of the Selous Scouts, just such a combat tracker unit in Rhodesia, and I'd like to ask him why there is a tremendous amount of secrecy attached to his unit. Why the mystique about the Selous Scouts?
Well, this was largely brought upon by ourselves. I personally do not go for publicity. I think an awful lot of units have spoilt themselves by attracting an aura of sort of supermen, which doesn't do the ordinary soldier any good. He starts to get a distorted opinion of his own abilities, which is bad. One must never underestimate oneself, but one certainly should never overestimate oneself, and this is something that is likely to happen with a lot of publicity. Also, and the more important aspect was that of our African soldiers. Now, these chaps are beyond price to us. They are invaluable. The training they go through, the limited numbers that pass through, the volume that starts a course, all these sort of factors make this chap a very valuable part of the unit. We're very anxious that their faces are not known to the public, particularly the African public, because it is a fact that chaps have been taken out on what we call R&R, rest and recuperation, when they go back to their home areas. We have in fact lost 4 men like this, and this was the prime reason we avoided publicity.
One of the founder members of the Scouts is the officer commanding training troop. I asked him about discipline.
Discipline in any young soldier is tremendously important, because once a soldier has learned to accept the forced or the imposed discipline, it's very easy for him to practice self-discipline. I feel that if a man wants to join the army, he expects the discipline, and when he gets harsh discipline, he realizes that it is only for his own good, and he's far more able to accept this harsh discipline. He's confined, he's not allowed time to think from anything else but the army, and this has had a very significant bearing on our young recruits. I think possibly people who don't know the unit or don't know the workings of the unit think that the unit is unregimented, because eventually this young recruit will be taken into the bush environment, and his modus operandi will be totally divorced from the harsh discipline. This is why we put so much emphasis on this disciplinary phase, so that it can instill in his mind the aspects of discipline, which can very easily and will very readily be brought to bear if the circumstances require.
The unit is multiracial. It is entirely voluntary, they're all volunteers. To get into the unit, each man has to pass a pretty rigorous selection course. It's a very hard course. The percentage pass rate varies from 12% to 17%.
Now the selection course is run over a 17-day period, and is a time where soldiers are tested, are presented with problems to see whether they represent the material required for a Selous Scout soldier. Basically, there are three areas in which we look at. We look at the psychological approach of a soldier. We look at his physical capabilities. And thirdly, we look at the standard of training that he has attained at that time. Because of the nature of the work, it is important that a soldier has the right mental approach to his work. And this is tested in a number of ways. We make him physically tired, in that he gets very little sleep in the duration of the course.
Don't all that stiff, don't all that stuff. Hey, drop that bloody leg!
The food aspect is another area which has a tremendous mental strain or psychological impression on a man. He doesn't know when he's going to get his next good meal. He doesn't know whether it's going to be today, tomorrow, the day after. He is required to eat a bouillon, which he's probably unused to. Although the flesh of a baboon is perfectly healthy, psychologically he is opposed to it, and this is an added strain to him.
As an instructor, how do you feel about driving men to these limits?
I feel nothing, personally. Just, they've got to experience it themselves. And before they came on the course, I'm sure they didn't expect their own bodies or their own minds to be able to take this. So that in itself proves it to themselves that they, just see how far they can push themselves.
He is shouted at, he is abused verbally, and a lot of people cannot stand this sort of treatment and punishment and will reject it. All this building up, this pressurizing the bugger, his mind, to see if he says eventually, stuff you with your bloody rubbish. And that is the very guy that we want out.
The endurance march is designed to take a man to the absolute threshold of his physical capabilities.
They are presented with a pack weighing up to 75 pounds. The important aspect of this is not the weight of the pack, but the fact that he's carrying 25 kg stone. This has got a two-edged effect. One, you've got the psychological effect, in that he knows that he can't eat his 25 kg when he gets to the other end. In fact, it's a worthless load. And secondly, it represents heavy equipment. A lot of people ask, well, why don't you give him the heavy equipment? If he wants to pack up in the chete, you can hardly throw away the heavy equipment, but you can throw away rocks. Another area on the psychological side of things, he knows at any time he can throw away his rocks and give up. And this works on him.
The men covered a distance of approximately 120 kilometers in 4 days. They are fed a minimal amount of food, 1 packet of army-type dog biscuits and a tin of bully beef for this entire period. The going is of a very rough country and ends in climbing a hill feature which taxes these men to the limit. What made you go on? You knew you had to climb this hill.
Yeah, I know. I've really done it. I've tried this course before. I've just decided to give it another bash and get to break it.
You want to join the Scouts that badly?
Yeah, I want to join the Scouts, but also because I failed last time. I'm more determined now this time to pass it. I'm ready to go now.
Go.
Go down. We've come up. I can go down now. I think if I come up, going down will be a bit easier.
You reckon you've finished the worst part of the course now?
Well, being so close to the end keeps one going. It's not so bad anymore. Even when you're really knocked out, you know you're near the end. Sometime tomorrow will be the end, and we'll be there.
On the last day, the home run is a speed march of 15 kilometers, carrying sandbags. Colonel Lee Daly, of 114 men on this course, only about 21 made the grade. Isn't that being too selective?
When you substitute quantity rather for quality, then you are asking for trouble. One of the hardest things to do in a unit is to maintain a standard, because as one builds up perhaps a reputation, people are apt to let things go to their head and things begin to slide. I think it's mandatory in these sort of units that a very rigorous selection is maintained so that the very best come in.
As an already trained black soldier in the Rhodesian Army, why did you go on the selection course?
I'm willing to pass the Selous Scout selection. I'm trying to join the Scouts, sort of supervise my soldiering, as I've always wanted to be at the top.
Well, was it as tough as you thought it was going to be?
Yes, it was. Surprisingly enough, it was not in the military context that I felt the toughness. It was in the limits of personal endurance, my personal endurance. I realised the physical aspect would be quite hard, but I never expected it to be combined, on the mental level, and psychologically it was very tough.
Was the selection course as tough as you were led to believe it was going to be?
Yeah.
What was the hardest bit?
Endurance.
What did you have to do?
That was the hardest. Oh, you carry this bloody pack up and down those gummos for 4 days, 3.5 days. It was rough.
What were you thinking about?
Nothing. You can't think about nothing.
Not food, not water?
If you think about food or water, he just buggers you up.
Well, do you think you're a Selous Scout now?
Well, not quite. Still got to do trekking course.
The basic trekking course deals in two areas of training. That is the practical and physical trekking of humans on the ground, and secondly the area of bushcraft. Now, trekking of humans is a very complex subject, particularly armed humans, which we specialize in. A student or a soldier that comes on the course can only be given the fundamental basics of trekking. You give him all the help, you show him what he has to look for, and then it is up to him to learn. I would say 90% of students, possibly more, 95% of students who are presented with the fundamental principles of trekking, in the right environment and with the right coaching, pick them up and eventually progress to operational trekkers. And this is what we try and achieve on the basic trekking course.
Next plant we're going to cover?
The second area that we deal with is bushcraft, a tremendously important area, and an area which we feel that every single infanteer should be taught. This gives a man total confidence of his environment.
Smooth leaf, okay? The actual vine, it's got a smooth, flaky, white bark. Also, in the cross section, you'll see definite figure of 8. To tap the water out of this plant, you start from the top, working down, cutting out 18-inch sections. Okay, reach up as high as you can, preferably climb the tree, and then cut it in this manner.
He is taught how to extract food from vegetation, water from vegetation.
It's burning now. Yeah.
How to make fire from vegetation, string from vegetation. All these are basic requirements for a soldier living in a bush-type environment.
To make his own strings to catch some birds and games in the gangan so that he can feed himself.
Also, they are taught the habits of game, habits of birds, how to trap. All this comes into the bushcraft, and it all means that if a man is working in an environment which he's totally familiar with, obviously he is going to be confident in that environment, and he's going to be able to track well in that environment. And this is the reason why the student-instructor relationship is very intimate, very close, and they go down to the real nuts and bolts of this particular piece of real estate that we live in, and that is the bush. Well, directly after the trekking course, the people who have passed the selection course are put onto a parachuting course. And after they have qualified, they have got one further small phase of training, that is the polishing up. We now test, look, and make a final assessment of our finished product. They are then presented with their wings and berets, and they are then regarded as Selous Scouts.
These are the mass graves of hundreds of men, women and children killed by the Rhodesian Army in one morning. Their camp had first been identified by a Rhodesian reconnaissance flight.
On his way home, he saw a gap in the clouds. They came through it, and right below him, fortuitously, was the camp, which the navigator snapped quickly. They blew it up so they could actually count the heads, and there were 800 terrorist groups, as we call them, formed up in a hollow square being addressed by their commander on the parade ground.
Over the next few weeks, the camp was kept under surveillance as its population grew to an estimated 5,000. In August 1976, Reed Daly decided it was time to strike. 70 Selous Scouts would cross the Mozambique border and drive into the near Dzonia camp disguised as guerrillas. They'd kidnap the commanders and destroy the camp. Reed Daly asked General Walls for his approval.
We unrolled all the maps on his floor, and he whistled in his teeth, and he looked at me and he said, a hell of a risk, you know. And I said, oh, it'll work, because that's the last thing I'd expect.
At 8 in the morning, the force swirled into the camp. Their disguise was so effective that they were mobbed by a cheering crowd, but someone spotted that masked troops in the back of one truck were white.
So the column commander gave the word to fire. It was like a scythe going through a cornfield. They just went down like flies.
A lot of them lay there injured and screaming, okay. I remember one girl, she was also injured and she was crying. She came from my home area and it touched me, and after that I didn't want to think about it. You know.
Our casualties were 4 lightly wounded, and they were over 1,000. The exact was 1,026.
Killed?
Killed. Now in war you can always, you work on, if for one kill there's always at least 2 wounded. So there were a couple of thousand others who should have been running around with what we call oil leaks, you know.
I've never forgotten the kind of sight I saw there. I think they must have emptied some tons of ammunition, judging by the shells that gathered that almost half an acre or more of a camp. Empty shells. It was really a massacre.
It was a good hit. And it certainly put Zanla back a long, long way.
It was played up as the usual way of being a refugee camp by the people on that side and by the United Nations. But I do believe that it was a justifiable military target.
Hickman's view is accepted by one of Mugabe's top commanders. So you don't have a complaint about the principle of Near Zonya being attacked?
No. No. As a soldier. They were talking to me as a soldier. Ah, yes. All I can say, like I was saying to General, was I said, how did you manage to knock us so flat? It really knocked us way to hurts militarily.
Near Zonya was followed by ferocious assaults on other guerrilla bases. They tested the resilience of Mugabe's forces to the limit.
You get so aggrieved, and it works on you and works on your emotion in such a way that you can never forgive perpetrators of action of this nature.
Mugabe reacted. He said, I'm beginning to wonder whether this armed struggle is worth pursuing. That's what he said to my face. When I expected such things to make someone more resolute, I felt very bad.
May the mountains standing by you ever guard you, and the rivers wash your spirit bright and clean. May the animals and birds sing of the peace that is to come, and of the glory of a land that might have been. May God be with you and keep you strong. May your tomorrows be rich and long. May the lives that you have taken be for reason, and the pain that you have suffered make you strong. May the seeds that have been sown bring out the fullness of the future. May God give you the strength to right your wrongs. It's just a dream, I know, but dreams set you free. Dreaming can ease your mind and bring you peace. May the sweetness of your soil yet bring you riches, and your pastures ever fill your belly's needs. May the nations that you harbor find a way to live as one. Keep your standards high and not give way to greed. May God be with you and keep you strong. May your tomorrows be rich and long.